With the Five Coats for a long time, and love this family and seen God use them in incredible ways. And she's been through some tough times, and I'll never forget the day of Lane's service. And Burgess and I stood here behind you, and we watched you the whole time as we come to comfort you. You in turn were comforting everybody else, and I saw you be pretty stern with some. But I heard the grace and the love of God in that. And I was overwhelmed. In fact, Burgess approached me after service. In fact, it was the next day. Burgess said, "Pastor, I think I found what ministry is all about." And he said, "I seen it in Tammy." And I thought, "You're right, bud. That's what ministry is all about." And so I appreciate you and love you guys so much. And I know you're just going to share what God gives you to share. And so we're going to receive it, and we're going to be blessed. Hey, give it up for my friend Tammy Five.
Well, I'll just make the statement at the beginning. I'm not a speaker. I'm not a preacher. I'm not a teacher. I'm a wife. I'm a mother. I'm a grandmother. And I'm a child of God. I brought my phone up here, but it's just for a reminder of some dates. I'm not going to call anybody while I'm up here. I thought it would probably be good to kind of go back and go over a little bit of our story from earlier in my childhood. How many of you can say that you've been through some stuff in this life? We all have. So I was raised up in a family of 5 children. My parents lost a child before I was born, so there would have been 6 of us. We would have been the Brady Bunch. There were 3 girls and 3 boys. My mother took us to church before my dad became a Christian. He, at one point in his life, suffered a severe nosebleed that they could not get stopped. And he promised God that if he would save his life, he would go to church and serve God, and he did. So we were raised up in church, and we went to an Assembly of God church, went there for 40 years, and learned a lot about God, learned a lot about life. We lost my dad when he was 59. I was 27 then. We lost my daddy, and that was the first loss that I've ever had in my life. And it was very traumatizing when you lose your parent. And so God brought us through that, gave us strength. And I think the whole sum of my testimony is the faithfulness of God in the eye of the storm. You know, I can prove to you that God will never fail you. He will never turn his back on you. And through every circumstance of life, he is there with you. I don't care how many times you fall. I don't care how many mistakes you make. I don't care how bad they are. God is with you. Later in life, my sister, who was 40 years old, her life was taken by her then husband in 2003 at the bank parking lot downtown. She and I were 16 months apart, so we were like connected at the hip sisters. She was beautiful. She was everything beautiful. She lost her life that day in a brutal situation, and then about an hour later, he took his life. Through that situation, they left a child who was then 10. He had just turned 10. So my husband and I took Devin. He's the big boy that comes with me in church. My husband calls him Tiny, but he's like me. He's not tiny, but he is beautiful. So we raised Devin, and needless to say, those years were very tumultuous. He was a troubled child. He had lost his mother and daddy on the same day. So his life was devastated. My life was devastated. My mother's life was devastated. Our entire family was devastated. Donna worked for Union Planners at the time in the trust department. She was a business lady, very gifted, had a beautiful voice, and she was just our baby sister. She was just all things precious. So there were a lot of years. I look back and I think I never really got to really mourn her loss because I had Devin to take care of, and he was a lot. He had a lot of trouble and a lot of things to work through in life, but God was with us. He saw us through all of those tumultuous years, and I can say that those tumultuous years did not end until about 2.5 years ago. So that's a lot of time. He's now 30. So after that loss, I had a brother who was 50. Kevin was born in 60. I was born in 62. Donna was born in 63. No, he was 60. I was 61, and Donna was 62. Anyway, we were just stair steps. He had struggled with drugs. He knew the Lord. He was raised up in church, but he struggled with drugs. And at the age of 50, he lost his life to an overdose. So that was another tragedy for our family to walk through. And again, I say that God was our strength. He was our source. You can't go through those kinds of losses in life. You can't go through the things that each of you have gone through without the faithfulness of God giving us a firm foundation to stand on. So we lost my brother, and then after that, my mother, she lived a good life. She was 80 when she died, so it was not a tragedy. It was a homegoing for her because she had lived a good life. She raised her children and half the kids in Jonesboro because she babysat in her home. In fact, the Sheriff Marty Boyd, his daughter, was raised up in our home. My mother took care of her and raised her. So there are a lot of school teachers and people in town that mother raised their kids, and now they're adults and they have children, and some have grandchildren. But through all of the turmoil and things, and I think a lot of my son's issues, I'm Lane's mother, a lot of the turmoil that started in Lane's life was at the time of my sister's death. We were very close. Our relationship, our family was probably dangerously close. We were always together. We did family things together, holidays together. But I kind of look back and see that it was about that time in his life that he started having issues with drugs. And so his battle with drugs started in probably right out of high school. And then he went to John 3. And I'm going to look at my dates so I can quote this correctly because I'm a senior, so I need a little help sometimes. He went to John 3 in March of 21 and stayed until October of 21 and graduated. He came home. He and Devin both lived with us. He came home and then shortly thereafter started having some struggles again. So after another wrecked vehicle and another situation that we knew was spiraling out of control, he went back to John 3 in September of 22, and he stayed until February of 23. And so he came home, he had a job, he bought a vehicle, and life seemed to be going well for him. And then on the morning of June the 29th, I got a phone call from his girlfriend at 6:30 in the morning because he went to work real early. He worked for Auger Dans and Truman. And so he got up early, left out for work, and came home, kind of mid-afternoon. But anyway, she said that he's not answering his phone. And I just thought, well, maybe he's overslept. So I went into his room. Well, I found him in his room deceased. And he didn't overdose on purpose. And I know you say, well, you're his mom. You don't know that. Well, he bought something or was given something from somebody that was for anxiety. And as you know, you don't buy anything from anybody or take anything from anybody because you don't know what's in it. And so we have, through an autopsy and a toxicology report, it was ruled accidental. So he didn't plan that night to go upstairs and take a shower and meet his maker. He thought he was going to take something to relieve his anxiety because that seemed to be something that he struggled with. Lane gained a relationship with the Lord when he was at John 3. And I can tell you that that was the best time of our life when he was at John 3. There's something about that place that is very special. And it's helped a lot of people to jump a hurdle in life and to get a leg up in life so that they can kind of get on the right path again. And as you know, a lot of people stumble. I'm sure there are people here that have stumbled again, and you've struggled, and you've got back up again, and you've fallen again, and you get back up again. But I say all of that not for pity. I don't say that for poor me, woe is me. I'll just tell you that losing a child is the worst kind of loss that any mother will ever experience. And I have to think about how the Lord feels about each one of us. We are his children. Do we have a relationship with him? Do we know the Lord? Have we surrendered our life to the Lord? Because, there's through Facebook, through social media, and through the world, everything looks, thank you, Jeff, everything looks all fancy and good, and you look at people's life and you think, they've got a perfect life. They've got the world by the tail and everything's good for them. But let me tell you, everybody in this room, everybody in this world is struggling with something. There's not one thing in this life that will ever fill the void in our heart but Jesus. There's not a pill, there's not a powder, there's not a drink, there's not a relationship. There's nothing in this world that will fill the hole. And I can tell you through the process of grief, I thought I grieved when my sister died. I thought I grieved when my mother died, when my brother died, when I lost my dad. But this has been a whole nother wagon. It's been a whole nother wagon when you lose your child. And I'll have to say there have been times that I've not been mad at God, but I have felt so empty and lost. I thought, am I still saved? I couldn't really read my Bible. I couldn't really pray. I'm just kind of now getting to the place where I feel like that I have found maybe my voice again. And I'll say from the get-go, I am not a perfect person. I'm not a perfect person. I have on my work clothes and I might look like I've got it all together. But I'm just as broken as anybody else in the room. But I have Jesus. And every time that I've ever failed the Lord, every time that I've dropped the ball, every time that I've ever done anything that I know didn't please him, he's never left me. He's never left me. He's never said, that's the last time. I'm not telling you again, that's your last chance. So I think, I didn't really know exactly everything that I was going to say tonight, but I thought, Lord, you know what needs to be said. If I put it out on paper, I'd probably mess it up. But I just want to encourage you tonight. There's not anything, there's not a loss, there's not a circumstance, there's not a trial, there's not a test, there's not anything that you're going to face in this life that God is not there to help you and to give you strength. And I think once you lose family members, and then if you ever lose a child, heaven takes on a whole new meaning. Lane was a Christian. He loved God. He was the most kind, loving soul you would ever want to meet. So I know where he's at. I know where he's at. But my thing, I look at life and I look at people and I think they're out so busy doing things that don't matter. The one thing that matters is, do we have a relationship with the Lord? Are we right with the Lord? If we go to bed tonight and we don't wake up on this side, are we going to be in heaven with the Lord? So I'm a little bit heaven obsessed. I'm a little bit eternity obsessed because I truly believe we're living in the last days. I don't know the day or the hour, and I'm sure nobody else does, but you can kind of tell by the signs of the time that we are living in a day like no other. And our time and our clock is running out. So before we chase after things in the world, before we chase after material possessions, relationships, things that we think we need to fulfill this void in our heart, we need Jesus more than we need anything. And if we trust and rely on the Lord, he will be our strength. He will be our fortress. He will be everything that we need. There's not any need that you have or that I have that God is not big enough to handle. So, like I said, I just want to leave you with this, that if you don't know the Lord, if you've really not surrendered your life to the Lord, I urge you to do that. Don't think that you have to be perfect to come to the Lord, because you don't. He takes us with all of our stuff and all of our baggage and all of our junk. And he makes something beautiful out of our mess. How many of you can say, he's made something beautiful out of my mess? So we all have a job to do. We all have a job to do, and that's to tell other people about Jesus. You know, sometimes I don't do a very good job. And lately I've had to kind of walk through some things where I feel like my attitude wasn't exactly where it needed to be. But I know that through the journey of grief, through the journey of life, through the journey of trials and tests, that God will never say, that's your last chance. So I encourage you to live for Jesus. Tell other people about Jesus. Share the love of Jesus with every person that you have an opportunity to. We don't have to stand at a pulpit. We don't have to be toting a Bible and beating somebody on the head with it. Love goes a long way. And so when people see the love of God in us, they're going to want what we have. They're going to want to know, how did you get through that? How did you survive that? How did you make it through that? And you can tell them, because God is my everything. He's promised to never leave us or forsake us. And he will not leave us or forsake us. So I hope this has touched somebody tonight, encouraged somebody tonight to know that just because you've made mistakes, just because you have fallen, you've fallen short. You feel like you've disappointed your families, you've disappointed your children, you've disappointed your friends. Just know that God says, get back up, let's go. Let's start moving forward. Let's keep walking forward. Let's do God's work. Let's see if there's somebody that we can touch and encourage today and show them the love of Christ. Thank you so much.